Welcome to the Thursday edition of Storytime with Angel. Today we're going to talk a little bit about the Infected series by Andrea Speed and her upcoming story, Epitaph, in the Infected series, which is actually going to be number 8. This is a series that's really near and dear to my heart. I absolutely love this series. Roan is one of my very favorite book boyfriends. It's a series that's sometimes gritty and sometimes dark. It's a lot dark. There's a lot of dark in this series, but it's absolutely fabulous. It's really imaginative. The world building is great. This is about a werecat viral infection that has affected the human race and society in general. But it's not paranormal. This really is done in a science fiction bent rather than a paranormal bent, even though we're talking about werecats. We just happen to be talking about folks who are infected with this very strange virus that forces them to change on a regular basis. Roan McKeon, the main character throughout this series, is the one exception. He was born infected with the virus. He is just a little bit different. So yes, he has had to undergo these changes throughout his life, but it's a little bit different for him because he's actually lived with it his entire life. I don't have a blurb yet for the book, but Epitaph will be coming out with Dream Spinner on November 18th, so look for that. I'm very excited about it. Like I said, this is number 8 in the Infected series. Andrea says this is the last one. Maybe. We all know how that goes. So there is a 1 through 7. There will be a prequel that she's still planning that takes place before book 1. There are lots of smaller ficlet items that she's put up on her website, flash fiction, short stories that kind of take place in between. There is a short story that's free right now on Dream Spinner called The Lost Weekend also that you might want to take a look at, but this is a really great series. It is absolutely fabulous. It will drag you under, and you just won't be able to stop. I never was. Alright, so here we have Roan's associate Holden, who works with him in the private investigation business now, and he has sent Holden to meet with a client because Roan is, as Andrea put it, otherwise indisposed, as we'll kind of see in this passage. So let's see what's happening here. Roan had emailed a copy of Liz's ID along with other files, so he knew what he was looking for. Immediately Holden found her, and it wasn't hard, as she was a little too dressed up for this particular Starbucks. Her hair was up, she had clunky gold jewelry on, and wore way too much makeup. Was he walking into one of those Real Housewives shows? Because she looked like a cast member. Her skin was a really unhealthy shade of fake bake orange, and next to all the pale Seattle people in the coffee shop, she glowed like a radioactive lamp. He walked over and introduced himself, holding his hand out and putting on his oh-so-professional voice, explaining that he was Mr. McKeon's associate investigator. Mr. It always felt weird calling her own that. And was filling in for him since he had been called away to work on a police investigation. This made her raise her penciled-on eyebrows. He works for the police? Occasionally, yes. He took a seat across from her and was almost leveled by her perfume. Did she bathe in it? It was like jasmine and baby powder, and it was fucking awful. It was a good thing Roan wasn't here, or the smell alone would have killed him. Don't they do their own investigations? Holden was tempted to say, no, they don't. Roan does all their investigations for them. He's that good. He also puts out fires with his mind. But he'd promised Roan he'd be on his best behavior, and jackassery probably didn't count as best behavior. He swallowed a sigh, taking with it all the insulting stuff he wanted to say, and simply told her, he's a special consultant on cases involving infecteds. Oh, she said in a way that suggested she didn't see it all. We just don't have enough information in this case to go any further unless you help us. The way her gold earrings swayed was almost hypnotic. What? I need access to Mandy's email addresses, her Facebook page, that sort of thing. The more information we have, the more likely we are to track her down. As it stands, trying to find a runaway is usually a zero-sum game. Unless they're using a card, which is why you probably shouldn't have killed your credit card so fast. You would have been able to track her to a specific address if you waited for her to make a charge in Seattle. She stared at him like he was an alien. I hadn't thought of that. Again, a sarcastic comment came to mind, but he bit it back. See how good he was being? He hoped Roan appreciated this. It doesn't matter now. Accessing her email will be our best chance of finding her at this point. I don't have access to her email. Yes, you do. You printed some of it out for us and gave them to us, remember? Along with IMs that usually can only be accessed by someone on the network. So if you can share that info, that would be great. She looked slightly flummoxed. It wasn't, it was on the computer. I don't know what her passwords are. It was possible that she was telling the truth. In fact, it was quite possible. But he felt like poking her just to see what happened. Ms. Pack, come on. We're all adults here. And this isn't a judgment. We simply need all the information we can gather if you want us to find your daughter unharmed. She grimaced and looked vaguely sick as she looked out on the street and avoided his eyes. It was just, I'm not an eavesdropper. I just wanted to know what she was doing online, you know? You hear so many horror stories about internet predators and all that. She was stalling, so Holden just took a guess. Roan did that a lot. You had spy software installed on her computer. At least she looked a little embarrassed, although it seemed forced. I don't know what it's called. I found it in a parent's forum. It recorded all her passwords and saved instant messages. Awesome. And she wondered why there was so much strain between her and her daughter. There wasn't a single bit of trust. And yet, she ran away. Didn't her messages tip you off that she was thinking of leaving? Liz shifted uneasily in her seat, gripping her coffee cup like it might save her life. I didn't always read them. It just about killed him not to exclaim, Fabulous! So you violated your daughter's privacy in the guise of protecting her. And then you get too lazy to read the fricking messages. You are a Class A genius, lady. I'm putting you up for Parent of the Year. Okay, so Roan was probably right that he still lugged around some parental bitterness. It took him the better part of a minute to swallow this all back, but it felt like a solid lump had wedged itself in his windpipe. He really should have ordered an overpriced coffee. We need those email addresses and passwords, right now, if you can remember them. I printed out the ones I thought you needed. We're investigators. You're paying us to search and find the clues you may have missed. Let us do the job you're paying us for. She looked torn in a way he found deeply irritating. Holden was warring with his own sarcastic, bitter impulses and losing when he heard someone exclaim, Holy shit! A barista dropped a spoon and Liz gasped, eyes going as wide as saucers as she stood up. Holden turned in time to see two cars crash into each other on the street, a Prius and a shoebox-sized Honda colliding in what must have been a war between the weenie cars. The Prius getting wedged against a parked car on the side of the street and pushed up slightly on the sidewalk, making pedestrians scramble. Holden was then able to see it was a lanky, mostly brown leopard, with spots shaped like melanomas running down the street, causing the commotion. Holden had just reached for his cell phone when he saw he wasn't alone in causing a furor. Roan suddenly jumped onto the roof of a car parked across the street, crouched down and bleeding from a slightly distended jaw, and even though all he could hear in this coffee shop was Carole King, just from the way Roan's nose was crinkled and flared, Holden guessed he was growling. Roan gathered himself, tensing, and then jumped off the car, landing about 20 feet away on the sidewalk, on his feet, running right after the leopard, who'd lost the lead it had amassed in a few seconds. Roan pounced on it and, wrestling with the twisting, desperate cat, rolled out of view. Had the people been reacting to the cat, or Roan and his various inhuman abilities? Maybe both at once. He turned back to face Liz, who was still standing and staring in open-mouthed shock, a hand clutching her throat like she was having a hard time breathing. Holden wondered if he was going to have a talk with Roan about not going all amazing Catman in the daylight. The cops finally arrived, so late to the party it wasn't even funny. I guess he made this meeting after all, Holden said, as Liz stared down at him, eyes shiny with shock. If she didn't run screaming from the Starbucks within 5 seconds and head straight back to Tennessee, he'd be damned surprised. All right, I see I have kind of a halo here while I'm reading. Sorry about that. But that is an excerpt from Epitaph coming in November from Dream Spinner, the 8th book in the Infected series by Andrea Speed. Make sure you take a look at that when it comes out. This is an absolutely fabulous series, and if you have not started it, you have time to catch up. Thanks for coming, thanks for listening, and we will be back on Saturday with another of my pre-GRL excerpts from one of my books. Thank you.